Welcome to Nailed It, a podcast featuring business tips from industry leaders, presented by Clever Punch. Here's your host, Jade Flogerzi.
So on today's episode of Nailed It, we're excited to welcome Matt Power, the Senior Vice President at LandAdvisors organization. With over 20 years of experience in real estate, Matt is a true expert in residential land transactions, specializing in the Central Coast and South Central Valley regions of California. Since joining LandAdvisors in 2003, he's played a key role in the sale of more than 30,000 residential lots, with a total consideration exceeding $625 million. His leadership in building relationships, deal sourcing, and territory management has consistently set him apart as a top producer. So today we'll dive into his career journey, what it takes to succeed in high-stakes real estate transactions, and discuss the current pulse of development on the Central Coast. Hi, Matt. Thanks for being here.
You bet, Jade. Thanks for having me. It's fun to do a podcast with you here.
Cool. I'm excited. I'm really excited to talk about developments in California and on the Central Coast. But before we get into that, I want to have a better understanding of what you do. So you work for this company, LandAdvisors. How would you explain your role?
Yeah, that's a great question and a good start. So LandAdvisors is a land brokerage company. Our mothership office, our core business is based out of Irvine, California. You know, back in the day, I started with them over 20 years ago. We started out as a small boutique company, Park Place Partners, and we were just a residential land brokerage company in the Inland Empire. We just worked in Riverside and San Bernardino counties, and that was it. So, you know, over time, we realized the need for housing in California and that we can kind of replicate our business plan at Park Place Partners into a bigger company. And come to find out, there was a LandAdvisors company out in Scottsdale, Arizona, and our partner at Park Place Partners got together with those guys and wanted to get a bigger platform put together. And so we merged with LandAdvisors. And so that made us really the country's largest exclusive land brokerage business and brokerage company that there is. You know, we'll compete with other companies like Cushman and Wakefield, but all we do is land. And so that was attractive to me when I was first getting into the business. Out of college, I went and did a runnership for a fellow water polo player that was working at Grubb & Ellis down in Newport Beach. And he was doing commercial leasing and industrial leasing and selling office buildings and stuff like that. And so my senior year at college, I was doing a runnership for him. And I thought I was going to go that direction after school and get into commercial leasing and go work for Grubb & Ellis. So at the time when I interviewed them, I had an opportunity there, but then 3 guys peeled off and started this residential land business. And they were just getting out into the market in like 1998. And I had a chance to meet them and interview with them. And I thought that was just a much better fit for me. So it was fun to get into the bigger company with LandAdvisors.
How many people are at the company now?
Oh, gosh. Now that we've merged with LandAdvisors, I think we have about 14 offices throughout the state. There's probably about 180 to 100 brokers like I am, and I cover just a geographic territory. And so we have experts mostly on the West Coast states, but we're starting to get into Idaho and Montana. And then we cover like Florida and South and North Carolina and some of those markets.
Cool. So what is your territories that you cover? Where do they extend?
Yeah, so I'm here out of Santa Barbara, which is my hometown, so I know it well. And my geography is Santa Barbara up the Central Coast through San Luis Obispo, Santa Maria, Paso Robles, all the way up through Monterey. And then I cover the South Central Valley, which is really Bakersfield through Fresno, Madera. And it's good. I have a really large geography, but it's nice because I'm really one secondary market. Our primary markets are like LA, Bay Area, Inland Empire, some of those places. But, you know, for me, I need a little bit bigger geography to have some affordability in the Central Valley and then some, you know, higher net worth opportunities here along the Central Coast.
And you only deal with residential, right?
I just do residential land. So if there's a building on it, I don't touch it. If it's got commercial, if it could be rezoned from commercial or hospitality or industrial to residential, I'll deal with it. But it's got to have an end use of just residential.
And is there a limit, like a minimum size property that you'll deal with?
I've done deals as small as 7 to 10 lots. if it's, if the trade value is worth working on. Our typical deal is probably anywhere from 100 lots minimum up to a master plan community that might have 5,000-6,000 home sites involved. We
And
love
does
those.
you love those? You're looking out
Yeah,
for those.
those are the big ones.
And is your relationship, is your transaction in your work, does it start with the landowner?
It does. Yeah,
Okay.
because without the land, we have nothing to bring to the home builders or developers. So that brings me back when I first started, we didn't have all this great internet access and ability to, put aerials together online. So in the beginning days, when I first started in the business, we had to go out and you drive the territory, get the lay of the land, see who's building out there. And then we'd actually have a plane fly aerial photos, and we'd put together a big portfolio of these aerials. And I would sit in the office and tape little squares and parcels and then label them to a corresponding file and do that stuff. So it's really important to be out and about in the territory in your younger years of the business. And over time, now it's just, I've been doing it for so long. It's really just interfacing with client, and the landowners really important, just because without that aspect of it, we have nothing to sell.
I bet you missed some of those days of when things were a little bit slower, right?
It was pretty fun. I had a Thomas guide in my front seat, and I just go out and drive and look at territories and meet builders and meet farmers. One of the funnest aspects of the business for me was going out and sitting on porches of, farming families out in the Central Valley and getting to know them and having lunch with them. And it took a Santa Barbara kid, you can only imagine, going out into a Bakersfield market. It took me years to get my name out there and a reputation that I was going to do well by them and represent them well. So it took a long time breaking into that industry.
Yeah, and building trust out there. How do you find your clients nowadays?
So now, since I've been in it so long, I'm fortunate that I have the ability to pick up the phone and just talk to home builders, neighboring property owners that I've already met. I've got great relationships with appraisers, with banks and lenders and equity groups. And so just interfacing with people in my industry, I tend to stumble upon deals. I had lunch the other day with a guy in Santa Barbara, and he's like, "Hey, have you seen this 100 lots that's coming up in Santa Maria?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no, I didn't see that thing." So just kind of interfacing and being in front of people and on the phone.
Yeah. And so just so we're all on the same page, what you do is you find the land and the developer and marry the two. And is your relationship, is that like several months, several years? How long do you stay involved?
It could be, the shortest life cycle of a deal can be 90 days. More likely, there's 6 months to 12 months, maybe longer sometimes. I've been in deals that have taken 2-3 years to finally close. But yeah, it's just, the main goal is to stay in front of the landowner clients, make sure they're represented well if they're entitling their property, that they're talking to the right land planners and people that help them with the entitlements, and then just staying in front of the builders. I spend a ton of time with builders like, KB Home, DR Horton, and Lennar, and understanding where they want to be and what they want to sell, so I can help kind of fit them into that position. And then from there, I help write and negotiate the offer, the price, the terms, and put that deal together, get them into escrow, and help guide that escrow with helping them find data and just whatever I can do to help, get to the closing time frame.
When you work with a developer, how far along are they usually with their vision or their goals for the property? Do they have to know exactly what they're going to do with it when you work with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Most of my seller clients that have the land have a plan in place. They've already met with a land planner. They're already in the process with the city and pushing through an entitlement. So if they have like a 20-acre piece of land, they're already pushing an entitlement for, say, 100 lots. And so the good thing about that is once the land's entitled, it's worth a lot more, because there's no question that they're going to get the 100 homes that they're hoping for. As it stands with 20 acres, it's one single lot. It has very little value as one single lot. So having that plan in place and entitlement in place is very valuable. And I like working on those because it helps the home builders get comfortable with the deal that, hey, we're guaranteed we're going to get 100 home sites out of here. Probably 10-20% of my time is spent on entitlement deals. So it's working with that farmer that may have 20 to 100 acres and they don't have that vision. They don't have any idea of how to, get this thing entitled. So if they're patient and they want to make more money at the end of the day, I'll help them get in touch with people that'll get the entitlements for them. Otherwise, if they just want to sell as is, I help talk to them about values on what it can sell at today or what it could sell at in 2 years entitled. And then they make their decision on how they want to sell.
Nice. Is this a competitive industry for you to be in?
It is. It's funny because it's a small world. We bump into each other, other brokers, other builders from different geographies. The people that finance these deals are pretty similar. So I'll be dealing with a group out of New York that financed a deal in Bakersfield that one of our guys in Riverside's dealing with. So it's a small industry, but it's pretty competitive because I'm bumping into groups like local brokerages that do commercial and industrial real estate where they may have a single guy or gal that do focus a little bit on land. So I'll be competitive with them, or there'll be a local realtor in town that knows some landowners. And so I'll have to compete with them a little bit. And then we also have some other groups that are just strictly focused on land like we are, but they tend to get distracted because they're not as territory focused as we are. They'll bump down to San Diego and do a deal, and then I'll see them in Santa Maria, and then they'll be up in San Diego. I don't go to those areas. I just try and stay completely focused in my little world and my bubble.
Do you ever team up with a realtor that has the relationship with the landowner?
I do. Yeah, I find that to be really valuable. I just got a 14-acre commercial site actually listed that was previously listed with a gentleman out of Pacifica Realty up there. So we're co-listing it now so we could both work the deal at the same time, and then we'll share in that commission. It's helpful to do that because there's boots on the ground there and they understand the deal well.
Yeah, and they have the relationship with the landowner already. That probably works in your favor.
It is. Yeah,
if that's already done. Willing to bring
me in. Yeah, I've dealt with Hayes Commercial Group a lot here in town in Santa Barbara where they'll be dealing with a client and they'll bring me in and we'll just share the deal.
Nice.
I'll go do the selling side of it and bring the builders to the table, but they've got the landowner relationship. So those are great as well.
And I'd imagine you'd bring so much expertise to the deal too, when it comes to feasibility. And like you said, what's possible, you can bring that knowledge to the table too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So we'll help with, if they need an appraiser, I know the local guys in each geography that can help, boost that value and represent it well. But yeah, I've got a lot of time just spent on the residential side. So I understand where acreage prices are, where paper lot prices are. Paper lot's an entitled piece of property, but it's undeveloped. So I've got a really good idea of what it costs to finish those sites and get them to finish lots and where that home might sell. So I can help pro forma those deals and get back to a really solid land value.
Why do you think people trust working with you? What's some of the feedback that you've gotten?
Great question. I think probably hanging my license with LandAdvisors. Our company name is so well established in the industry. We've got a great reputation. A lot of times people will call LandAdvisors and say, hey, I've got 80 acres somewhere, call it San Luis Obispo. Who do I call? So I get a lot of business just being with LandAdvisors because that's all we do is residential land. So that's been a big help. I think the other part is I stay focused in my territory. I'm the expert here. I know every piece of property. I know all the landowners, all the home builders, the apartment builders, the equity people. So if somebody has a project they want to bring to fruition, it's very likely I'm going to know who the end user is and how to sell it. I think the third aspect of that is probably how we sell deals. We have some of the best offering memorandums in the industry. We're really detailed with what we produce. So you can read our offering memorandum and really understand what the project is or could be. And we put nice data rooms together. So we have full information of conditions of approval, engineering cost estimates, soils reports. We like to collect a lot of data. So when somebody looks at it, they can make really clear and concise decisions on what to do with, purchasing it. We go
and all
pretty deep.
All that information compiled, is that a offering memorandum?
All the information is put into, that offering memorandum. Okay. So you'll see a visual aerial of the site. You'll have a description of the zoning, how many dwelling units per acre it is. If the seller's done a cost to complete estimate, we'll outline that. We'll put together a fee structure based on the city fee schedule on what it costs to go pull a permit. So we'll go really into detail on giving them the best education so they can make a proper offer. Yeah.
Now let's get into, I'm so curious to know, the pulse of California, specifically Central Coast and South Central Valley. is where you're focused and where you work in. And this is like, everybody is interested in this. This is something that's changing so much. People talk so much about, housing shortages, and it just feels like California is most states could say that too, but California feels like it's in such a state of flux and change right now. How have you seen things change in your market in the last, say, 3 to 5 years?
It's changed a lot, and in part due to COVID. Back in 2020, I think every single one of us at LandAdvisors thought, oh boy, here we go again. We're going to go into another housing slump like we did in 2008 with the financial meltdown. And I think all of us lost probably 90% of our escrows in 2020 when COVID hit, because everybody thought things were just going to crash. But I would think like maybe 6 months after COVID hit, people started realizing that home is where you're going to be. I mean, home is your place, home's your safe spot, so everybody started jumping back into the market, buying homes. And the best thing for my territory, being along the Central Coast, is I've always been a pretty quiet market where it's kind of hard to afford a home here. It's hard to find a job in our location. Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Santa Maria doesn't have a huge amount of job opportunities. But what changed in the last 3 to 5 years for me is the ability for home buyers to work from. Families can come and get a bigger home up in Santa Maria than they can afford down in Los Angeles and have that extra room for an office. They could dial in, do what we're doing, get on a Zoom call, and really have access to work anywhere they want to work. So that was a really big change that helped the Central Coast and Central Valley, just due to its affordability, to open up those markets.
Is the change with the drought a factor as well? Like, did that limit development before, and then that's more flexible now?
Yeah, we had a water moratorium in Goleta for, a number of years. And that's finally, since we had a huge rainfall the last couple of years, that's finally opening up, and we can pull water permits again in some of those areas. So that's really positive. We've had such a restriction on housing and entitlements. Then to get hit with that water moratorium, it just made everything difficult and come to a halt. But there's a new mandate now for California to meet the demand of housing. And so each jurisdiction, each county up and down the state have identified future sites that really need to be pushed through for entitlements to meet affordable housing standards and market rate housing standards, and really start pushing that process to get these entitlements done. So I think our future is pretty bright with opening up new possibilities and new land positions that will get approved to get built. Interesting.
What trends are you seeing when it comes to development? What do developers want to build right now?
Right now, the for rent side's a little bit soft. There was a time where a lot of guys wanted apartment deals where you'd get, 2 to 3 story stacked flat garden style apartment deals that are dense. You can get a lot of value out of those and rent them, but the rents have softened with the interest rate environment. That product is really expensive to build. That was the other thing in the last 3 to 5 years. Costs of lumber and inflation and everything really drove up cost to build a home, cost to develop the land. And so that really pushed us into a trend of today's most prominent market is the single family detached lot for sale home product. That's what most of my buyer clients want me to find them, maybe 100 single family detached lots so they could build a little for sale community. But for now, the for rent stuff's a little bit soft.
What you just explained, that's like a finished home on the property?
That's a finished single, just a traditional home on the property, yeah.
And what areas are crazy busy right now, and what areas are stagnant in the territories that you work in?
In my territories, Bakersfield and the South Central Valley are pretty active right now. All the home builders are out there buying that next piece of property just because they're selling homes quickly. It's the most affordable area in California, and with the ability to work from home, you can go out there and buy a nice 4-bed, 3-bath home in the $400,000 range. That's hard to find in California with a decent place to live. I would say for the Central Coast, San Luis Obispo has always been our kind of shining star. We've got properties that are entitled. We've got master plan communities that have just kicked off. So like Avila Ranch up in San Luis Obispo has a couple thousand lots associated with it, and we're only in the first 200 to 300 of them. And so there's going to be some really good, solid inventory coming to that market. And it's more affordable in Santa Barbara. It's a nice place to live. You still got Pismo Beach, 10-minute drive away. So it's a really kind of a lifestyle place with a little more affordability for this. Those markets are going to continue to push.
Another thing that's unique about that area compared to Santa Barbara is that it's new construction, which you don't see around here.
Yeah, that's really hard to find in Santa Barbara. We don't have a lot of entitled sites. There's a huge draw to San Luis Obispo, Santa Maria, and Nipomo because we have larger master plan communities, like up in San Luis Obispo. Avila Ranch has, 2,000-3,000 home sites that are just getting started. We're about at the 300th home right now. So there's a lot of availability. You can get a nice new home. You can telecommute to work. Great place to live with Pismo Beach, just a 10-minute drive. And so the lifestyle living is really popular. And that's probably our best market here on the Central Coast.
What are some of the biggest challenges that developers have to deal with?
Today, still the cost to build. It's really expensive. And there's been, I have a lot of landowners that say, hey, the costs of homes have gone up, 30-40% in some instances. My land should go up that much. But that's the hard part for me as a land broker is it feels like the land prices should have followed at the same percentage rate, but it hasn't, just because the cost for the builders to actually finish and build that home is really expensive. Lumber went up, asphalt went up because it's a petroleum product with gas, and it's just gotten really difficult. Interest rate environment with our higher interest rates, that's kind of slowed things down for home builders. So they've been battling that and how to give. A lot of the bigger builders will give incentives. They'll either help buy down the interest rate, or they'll offer, a lot of upgrades in the house that would have cost 30, 40, 50 grand that they'll throw in for free just to help get a buyer to jump in. So the margins have gotten thin for the builders. I'd say the biggest hurdle for me in my territory on the Central Coast for the home builders anyway is getting a project actually entitled to the finish line. Sometimes it'll take 3 to 5 years. Once they start with 100 acres and want to end up with 500 home sites, they'll go get their approval, but then a neighbor group will go sue them because they don't want people building on the Central Coast and they want to keep it small and quaint. So there's a lot of things that make it difficult for the home builder to finish a project, but those are probably some of the most prominent.
Yeah. Do you run into environmental issues a lot too?
We do, especially on the Central Coast. Yeah. We've got some projects that have been halted for years and years to try and figure out how to mitigate for that. It could be an endangered species like the red-legged frog, kit fox, things like that. It could be a plant species or something that you have to relocate. A lot of times mitigation properties, with a lot of oak trees or something can be purchased and put in a preserve to help with that. But a lot of that takes a lot of time. The Central Valley has a little bit less of that because most of the projects out there are farm ground. And so they're already, people are turning the dirt and there's not a lot of trees on them and stuff like that. So it's a little bit easier in the Central Valley versus the Central Coast.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And nice for people to have you along for the ride to help them on every step, because I'm sure everything that comes up, you're like, oh, I've seen this before. All right, here's how we're going to deal with it.
It's amazing the amount of things that can blow up a deal. I've seen so many different aspects, some things you can't even think of, but there's a lot of things pushing against development that make it difficult, but it's really fun and challenging. And that's part of the reason why I love the business is you bump into these things and you got to go out and problem solve and find, the proper consultants and people to help with the process. And that's one thing I like to do. I don't like just putting a deal together and waiting for it to close. It's fun to interact and help them find the proper people and how to solve problems. And it makes it really more exciting.
Since you're so involved, are you ever enticed by any of these deals? Like when you're seeing what's going to happen with it, are you like, oh, maybe I should get in on this?
Yes, we've looked at that. We've had a few guys in our company kind of peel off and start investing in deals. I wanted to just stay focused and be the broker. It's a risky business because we are 100% commission. And if we don't close a deal, we don't get paid. But doubling down on the deal and maybe investing in it and still not being able to, have it come to fruition. I just wanted to really focus and stay, highly focused on the brokerage side of it and helping put deals together. So I've stayed away from really investing in them.
Keeping it simple.
Just keep it simple. I've got three kids to feed and colleges to pay for. So, I don't want to keep those funds secure and make sure that they can go towards the family.
That makes sense. Nothing wrong with being stable. Well,
Yes.
Thanks so much for this conversation. It's super interesting what you do. I love learning what people do because there's always jobs or industries where you're like, I've never thought of that. I didn't know that there needed to be somebody in that, position to be able to help with that. And great to hear just an update directly from your perspective and from the source on what's happening with development in California, how things have changed, and what we can expect in the coming years. So thanks so much for the conversation. If somebody's interested in talking with you about any details with their property or any questions that they might have about what you do, how can they reach out to you?
They could pick up the phone and call. I'm on the website. I've got an email linked on the website at LandAdvisors.com. I think it's the California division, LandAdvisors Organization, California.com. I'm on LinkedIn. So you can email, give me a call. Would love to help you out with anything you have.
Cool. And your contact info we'll put in the show notes too. So for anyone listening, you can look there. You're still a phone guy.
Great.
They're an endangered species, but it's nice for people to be able to still pick up the phone.
Yeah, no, I live on the phone, and if I'm not on the phone, I sometimes don't feel like I'm working hard enough. So it's good to keep the contacts going.
I love it. Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jade.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Nailed It, business tips from industry leaders, brought to you by Clever Punch. Nailed It is all about connecting with people, building relationships, and helping each other. If you're interested in connecting with any of the guests on our episodes, you can find their contact info in our show notes or on the podcast page at cleverpunchco.com. You can also email info@cleverpunchco.com with any questions or feedback. I'm your host, Jade Flogerzi. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.